Hi, my dear Russo family. It is your weekly forecast starting on 8th of June until the 14th of June. Well, if your brain feels fried or your plans keep melting this week, blame the cosmos. We are entering one of the most volatile, fast-paced weeks of 2026, between an unpredictable cosmic wild card squaring the nodes of destiny and the rogue moon, escaping standard reality entirely. The old rules do not apply between June 8th and 14th. So we are going to be breaking that down, but it feels like the universe is handing you a master plan this week also, but only if you have the guts to execute it. On June 9th, a rare multi-part tactical alignment begins that won't fully resolve until January of next year. If you are ready to stop playing defense in your career and start engineering a bulletproof strategy for your money and your boundaries, you need to look at this week's chart right now. So what exactly I am talking about? Well, we have got mainly squares happening this week and some new planetary cycles. So, for example, the Uranus and the North Node square, but we're going to have a really lucky alignment as well, the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, and also the Saturn-Pallas Athene conjunction happening also. But let's break it down. So first up is 8th of June. Urania enters Gemini, and then it's going to be making a conjunction to Uranus immediately. So when Urania, the asteroid of astrology, astronomy, and cosmic intellect, enters Gemini and immediately aligns with Uranus, it acts as a massive amplifier for that higher mind. Gemini represents our local network, communication, intellect, while Uranus is the planet of sudden breakthroughs, disruptions, and radical innovation. Together, this conjunction acts like an electrical storm in our cognitive processing. It brings sudden flashes of insight, a massive urge to learn alternative subjects, a breakdown of old, rigid ways of thinking. Information flows at lightning speed, so we can expect a lot of gossips. And our capacity to see the bigger picture through microscopic details is highly magnified as well. This combination altogether should be something to do with a discovery of a new planet, for example, discovering something in the cosmos. Now, maybe you are working on a digital project or trying to fix a software bug. Out of nowhere, a random thought clicks and you completely restructure your workflow, saving yourself hours of future frustration. But maybe during a casual conversation with a neighbor, a coworker, a sibling, they mention a book, a course, or a tool, and this spark instantly triggers a brand new obsession or research rabbit hole that changes your weekly focus entirely. But also, you can be receiving or sending a completely unexpected message, an email, text, or DM that abruptly alters your daily schedule or opens up an immediate, fast-paced collaboration opportunity. Now, in the world, like I said, it might be a scientific or digital breakthrough, major announcements regarding data networks, AI technologies, communication infrastructure. Expect sudden news about satellite technology, aviation innovation, radical updates to mainstream social media algorithms also. There could be a viral piece of information or a major whistleblowing event that upends the current news cycle. The public focus shifts overnight due to a highly analytical, data-heavy revelation. Just like I said, it could be a gossip as well. So just watch out what you believe in. Do's and don'ts. I mean, maybe you want to carry a digital notepad because brilliant ideas will hit you while you are driving, walking, or in the middle of any type of tasks, really. So write them down immediately because often with Uranus, Urania, they disappear as fast as they arrive. It might be an excellent week to learn a new digital application, organize your cloud storage, streamline your communication channels, and just stay flexible with your daily schedules. I think what we shouldn't be doing with this aspect is to commit to the first bright idea, because this energy is highly erratic. An idea might feel like a stroke of genius, but upon review on Saturday, it might lack a solid foundation. So sleep on it before investing energy or time or even money into an idea. And don't overload your nervous system either. I mean, with the mental energy running this high at the beginning of the week, it is easy to burn out as well. Now, on the 9th of June, we have got that beautiful Venus and Jupiter conjunction. And it's happening on 25 degree of Cancer, which is actually an Aries dwad. And when Venus, the planet of values, relationship, and finance, unites with Jupiter, the planet of expansion, luck, and wisdom, this is the most naturally auspicious and benevolent alignment, pretty much. The previous conjunctions between Venus and Jupiter pretty much happened in the sign of Taurus. So our luck combo is kind of like shifting right now. Cancer is one of the most sensitive protective sign. So it does create that massive surge of growth, but centered around emotional security, the home, our foundational assets. This is the ultimate nurturing wealth alignment, magnifying our desire to protect, feed, or grow what we love. So, because this conjunction hits 25 Cancer, it falls exactly within the Aries dwad. So, it means that it is being micromanaged by Mars. And this injects the normally cautious, self-protective waters of Cancer with more of a bold entrepreneur fire. Instead of waiting passively for security, this alignment gives you the absolute courage to actively conquer and secure your domain. It brings a pioneering spirit to family ventures, a fierce protectiveness over your value, and the confidence to take that calculated, passionate leap of faith to build your empire. So you might make a bold, sudden decision to invest heavily in your private living space, real estate, or a major home-based project. Guided by absolute inner certainty, you commit resources to transform your environment into some type of high-value sanctuary. Or in your business or personal life, you draw a fierce material line in the sand. You confidently pitch a premium rate or establish a boundary that safeguards your time and energy, refusing to let outside forces drain your core resources. And maybe this is a sudden flash of insight shows you exactly how to monetize a highly specific local project or a specialized service. You launch it potentially immediately with intense passion, attracting clients who value deep trust as well as security. I think in the world we might see massive real estate housing deals. Global markets see high velocity investments, major mergers, or aggressive government policies focused on housing infrastructure, local property rights, domestic banking system, but also maybe major announcements regarding rapid funding or pioneering infrastructure updates for domestic supply chains, agricultural reserves, and local food distribution networks. But this is also telling you that your luck comes from your tribe. The luck comes from your people you you love spending time together with. So this is somehow also telling us that we need to be building on our inner or we need to build on our internal foundation, and we need to be surrounded by people who actually love being around us. This is when you have to be investing in your foundation. Yes, you can use this day to initiate financial strategies, contracts, or home upgrades that lock in long-term safety and comfort for your inner circle. if you want to launch something, this is about launching with heart and a bit of fire as well. If you're promoting a product and reaching out to a collaborator, speak directly to trust, emotional value, and real results. Uh, Cancer is about care. So the genuine care paired with a bit of bold execution can become unstoppable right now. And if your intuition screams to stop or to back or protect a specific asset, act on it immediately. I wouldn't defend out of pure irrational panic, though. With Cancer and Aries mixing, watch out for hyper-reactive emotional defensiveness. Make sure you are fighting to build something great, not just lashing out from a temporary fear of, let's say, poverty. You can really overextend your domestic budget as well. Jupiter expands desires, and that Aries would loves a high stake gamble. So avoid signing contracts or making large purchases based entirely on a temporary rush of excitement without checking, for example, the long-term cash flow. And while guarding your assets is key, don't smother a new idea or a person in your life by refusing to let it adapt, change, or interact with outside energy patterns. Like I said, this is one of the most beneficial aspects of all time. So it could bring you luck, for example. It could bring you luck. This is not a passive luck, though, because it's an Aries dwad. So we cannot sit just tight. It's a highly active combination. It's like a triumph energy. So, yes, we have got that joyful, unstoppable courage into your heart. You aren't just dreaming about a better life, you feel an intense positive drive to claim it. So, this is the pioneering abundance transit, giving you the perfect blend of emotional intuition and a bold confidence. It's a lucrative opportunity, an unexpected financial win, or a brilliant business idea. And yes, maybe it's going to drop right into your lap. And you can feel that immediate wave of confidence and take fast, inspired action to lock it in, knowing it will elevate your long-term security. This could also be a relationship upgrade as well. It's a beautiful moment of deep emotional connections, love, or mutual celebration. It's about how to make myself feel safe, deeply valued, and ready to boldly open up my heart to a beautiful new chapter, maybe with someone close to me. Or maybe you find a perfect piece of furniture, finalize a brilliant real estate move, or successfully launching that thriving home-based project. Sometimes the negative side of it is that we can really feel or believe that it's like a booming economic optimism. Or it's also brilliant for celebration of culture and heritage. Global media likes uplifting stories celebrating cultural triumphs, historical preservation or beautiful acts of humanitarian generosity that unite communities. And our hearts can be touched by that. Okay, so the next aspect is still happening on the same day. We have got, just a second, I got lost here. Yeah, we have got Saturn and Pallas Athene conjunction happening in the sign of Aries. Now that happens on 12 degree. And actually, this is the first of three conjunction. So one happens 9th of June. The next conjunction is going to be happening on 10 degree on October 18th, when both Saturn and Pallas Athene will be retrograde. And the third conjunction is going to be happening on 8 degree Aries happening on January 10th, and both of them are going to be direct at that time. So we have got Saturn, the cosmic architect of discipline, boundaries, long-term structure, joins forces with Pallas, which is the asteroid of strategy, warfare, pattern recognition, tactical intelligence. In that very fiery, pioneering sign of Aries. So we are witnessing the birth of a major master plan, basically. This is not a time for soft, passive thinking. It is about weaponizing logic, engineering defense system, building concrete frameworks to achieve our ambitions. This transit demands that we take the raw impulsive drive of Aries and structure it with flawless tactical precision. Like I said, this is the first of three exact conjunctions. So that's just marking the initial chapter of that structural overhaul that will unfold over the next 7 months. What you initiate or battle or plan right now is not necessarily a quick fix. It is the foundation of a long-term strategy. So the first blueprint is the 12th degree of Aries. This is the initial challenge that appears, or the grand strategy is born. Your identity, you identify the obstacle, and you must design a concrete, structured plan of how I'm going to be attacking this. And then October 18th, that's a deep revision. Now, the next conjunction is on 10-degree Aries, when both of them are going to be retrograde. So the stress test phase. The plan is forced backwards for intense reviews, restructuring, and correcting hidden structural flaws. And then January 10th is the final execution. The third conjunction is on 8-degree Aries, and both of them are going to be direct. So that's the resolution there. The ultimate implementation of that strategy with absolute discipline, clarity, and structural permanence. So maybe you realize a business system or a boundary is vulnerable to exploitation or inefficiency. And instead of reacting emotionally, you sit down and design a rigid structured protocol or system to safeguard your assets. Or you initiate a very disciplined, structured body or health regime. And it requires rigorous planning, calculating metrics, setting specific timelines, organizing logistics, rather than relying on temporary motivation. Aries is the biggest fire of all, so often that's the most motivated signs of all. And then it looks like that we are facing a stubborn roadblock. And you stop trying to force your way through it. You step back, map out the pattern of the problem, and build a systematic step-by-step checklist to solve it for good. Now, like I said, Pallas Athene is about pattern recognition. Imagine that Saturn is the foundation, is the bricks. So you're looking for the cracks in the bricks, and you start seeing the pattern in it. So what's the solution there? I'm going to be rebuilding that, or I'm going to be patching up those cracks. Now, in the world, I think it's about military defense. I think major nations or alliances unveil highly calculated long-term defense strategies, border security restructures, military modernization frameworks. Also remember that this alignment only happens once every 4 years. So this is a conjunction. So the stuff that we are talking about is going to be affecting us for the next 4 years. I think there's going to be quite a lot of effort to build more rigid infrastructure against systematic vulnerabilities, specifically focused on defense networks, data protection laws, and structural grids. And I can also imagine it's like a political chessboard, really. So I can imagine a major drawn-out legal battles or political policies that we want to be implementing. And key players lay down rigid, uncompromising strategies that set the terms of engagement for the rest of the year. So what you can do with this aspect is you can really map out your long-term moves. You can really set unshakable boundaries, and you can embrace patience and systemization. You know, think of Palasatini as a puzzle. So accept that the puzzle you are solving today will take time to fully resolve. Trust the process of building that bulletproof foundation. We can rush into a blind battle with this as well. Aries wants to charge instantly, but Saturn will penalize reckless behavior. So do not launch or attack or confront an issue without a calculated exit strategy or a backup plan. Or abandon the plan at the first sign of friction. That might not be a good idea. When obstacles arise this week, don't scrap your strategy. Remember, this is a three-part process. Initial friction is simply data to help you refine the plan. What's also interesting with this that Mercury is squaring both of them at the same time within hours. Saturn and Pallas join forces in the very aggressive, sign, but it's a highly disciplined master plan, really. And then Mercury comes around and then throw a major cosmic curveball. A square creates intense friction and the mandatory turning point. Mercury in Cancer thinks with the heart. It is deeply intuitive, protective, emotionally driven, and focused on security, comfort, and the past. On the other side, Saturn and Pallas in Aries are fighting for the future, demanding cold logic, rigid boundaries, an immediate, unsentimental action. So it feels to me that this square is a psychological tug of war. Your brain knows exactly what tactical moves must be made to protect your future, but your emotions, attachments, or a fear of rocking the boat pull you backward. And not to mention that Mercury is gonna go retrograde in the sign of Cancer. So it really feels like that the heart is kind of like winning here. The cosmic challenge here is to avoid letting subjective emotional defensiveness hijack objective, long-term strategic decisions. I mean, maybe you have mapped out this very disciplined schedule, to kind of crush a professional project or that fitness goal. And then suddenly a domestic issue, family obligation, or a wave of nostalgia, fatigue hits you, tempting you to abandon your structured plan to seek comfort. Or maybe this is a very difficult boundary conversation. You need to enforce that professional boundary, let's say with a client, a colleague, a family member. When time comes to speak up, Mercury in Cancer makes you overthink how they feel, causing you soften your words or hesitate, kind of muddying that clear boundary you meant to set. Or maybe an old familiar insecurity or past memory surfaces, making you second guess a bold pioneering decision you made earlier in the week. So, in the world, I can imagine like major global headlines feature intense arguments between government administrations demanding strict, rigid borders or economic policies, and the public or humanitarian groups pleading for emotional care, housing, protection of vulnerable population, and so forth. Or maybe a major company announces a very efficient structural change or a budget cut. And this is immediately met with that highly emotional response from the workforce or the public regarding job security and employee well-being, and so on. Or there could be sudden news or rumors regarding real estate, food supplies, or domestic infrastructure, causing a brief wave of reactive emotional commentary, or kind of like the panic buying in local markets. I think you need to acknowledge the emotion, but you have to stick to the data. I think you have to write out scripts for tough conversations and not necessarily delineating from it. And it's also about securing your inner circle first. We can use that protective nature of Cancer to ensure that our immediate environment and emotional foundations are safe. So you have the psychological strength to execute those bold plans that Saturn, Pallas Saturn in the sign of Aries come up with. Now, we do have got a bit of an astrological break coming up. So we are on June 12th, and this is when we are going to be experiencing the Uranus square, the nodes. I'm going to be breaking this down for you a little bit, but I'm going to be making a lot longer video on that. Because, of course, this is a big one. I mean, we haven't had this for a while. It means that Uranus is at the bending of the nodes. That's how we call it. The nodal axis represents our collective karmic track, where we are coming from and where we are evolving towards. So where we are coming from is the south node, and where we are going is the north node. A square from Uranus acts as a massive, unavoidable bottleneck. Uranus is the wild card, the planet of sudden disruption, revolution, lightning bolt awakening. So when it squares the nodes, that collective is forced into a sudden jump. The old path is blocked by unpredictable events, and the future track demands absolute innovation. So it indicates a massive reset moment where structural, technological, or societal trends shift on a dime, rendering past strategies completely obsolete. So I think it's out of nowhere, an unexpected event or an unexpected realization forces you to cut ties with an old way of working or living. And maybe a sudden opportunity appears that forces you onto a completely blank slate or a blank canvas path. Maybe it's a major software tool, a platform, or workflow you relied on for security completely fails, changes its terms, or shuts down. And this forces you to urgently adapt to something more modern, automated, something that you had been avoiding. Or maybe, it's like Southern is the before and then the Northern is the after. So you can really experience this distinct before or after moment in how you view your career, your long-term directions, your relationship, and maybe an old ambition suddenly loses all its appeal, replaced by a fierce craving for personal freedom and autonomy. I think in the world, we will see that major global alliances encounter sudden frictions. Treaties or diplomatic tracks are interrupted by some unexpected events, forcing world leaders to scramble and redraw their long-term roadmaps. I can imagine unexpected disruptions to global supply chains, internet infrastructure, electrical grids. Maybe a major technological shift forces industries to completely change how they handle data and energy and so forth. Okay, so the next one is still on the 12th. Hopi enters the sign of Cancer. Asteroid Hopi represents deep territorial awareness, indigenous wisdom, environmental stewardship, and a profound, almost sacred duty to protect your home and family. It speaks to our deep-seated survival instincts, ambushes, and our relationships with the land we inhabit. So when Hopi leaves that fast-paced air sign, Gemini, and enters a deeply emotional, intuitive sign of Cancer, that protective sign, our definition of security shifts entirely. Cancer rules the home, the homeland, the ancestral roots, our innermost vulnerabilities. So our focus narrows to what truly keeps us safe. It heightens our protective instincts, over our loved ones, our private spaces, our homeland, our emotional resources. So it's like a home fortification. Maybe you are upgrading your home security system, organizing emergency supplies, fixing household vulnerabilities. Maybe a strong desire to hits you to look into your family history, revisit childhood roots, or reconnect with a tradition of yours. Cancer rules tradition. And maybe you are ready to kind of cut off some social noise to focus exclusively on yourself, on your inner circle. So you start protecting your time, your energy, your privacy from outside intrusions. So I'm prioritizing my emotional safety. And of course, those under the same roof as well. I think in the world, this is territorial and housing policy shifts. Maybe we are going to be seeing announcements that certain countries do not want to sell properties to foreigners, for example, or under certain, legislations. There might be global news highlighting major discussions around territorial rights, domestic borders, indigenous land protection, national housing security. Um, Maybe a renewed collective focus on sustainable agriculture, local food supplies, the preservation of natural water resources, historical lands. And I can also imagine the rise of traditionalism, actually. A distinct cultural shift where communities pull away from globalized digital noise just to focus on traditional, kind of like the grassroots support network. This is when you can fortify your personal sanctuary, honor your intuition and roots, and nurture your core tribe. That's what you are invited for. However, protectiveness can turn into paranoia as well. Cancer energy can become overly defensive, so avoid looking at every outsider or minor change in your routine as an ambush or a threat to your security. You can isolate yourself in a defensive shell as well. You can even ignore structural leaks in your private life. Whether it's a physical leak or a gap in your, security or an unspoken tension in your domestic environment, just do not ignore it. Address it directly. Now, on the 13th, Venus is actually in square to Chiron, and that is happening on that infamous 29 degree. So this day, you know, Venus reaching the 29 degree, the energetic degree, is an urgent culmination. It's a crisis and forms that exact 10 square to Chiron. So a square to Chiron, who is the wounded healer, and I've spoken in length about Chiron approximately about 2 weeks ago in my weekly forecast. But it really feels like it's an emotional reckoning. Cancer wants safety, belonging, emotional protection, while Aries fights for a raw independence, individual identity. But this alignment acts as a healing crisis for our relationships and self-worth. It forces us to confront where we have compromised our own identity just to keep the peace or stay emotionally safe. Imagine that as a vulnerable knot. And then we start kind of clearing that. And the energy is going to break wide open because Venus immediately leaves that sensitive, cautious Cancer, and enters that fiery, bold kingdom of Leo. So the vibe shifts instantly from self-protection to self-expression, creative pride, the demand to be seen, appreciated, celebrated. It kind of feels like it's a final ultimatum, an ongoing emotional pattern or an unspoken wound in a relationship or business collaboration reaches kind of like a boiling point. And you are forced to choose between staying quietly resentful in your comfort zone, in your home, and then crying kind of like in your bedroom, or speaking up for your worth, even if it risks maybe a bit of a conflict. Or after maybe a morning spent overthinking your insecurities or feeling unappreciated, you hit a turning point. You decide you are done playing small. And maybe by the evening, you update your personal CV, launch something. I'm going to be confidently showcasing my skills. Or you realize that someone in your life is underestimating your worth because you have been too accommodating, too nice, too sweet. And I decide to draw that very sharp, dignified line. So I'm going to be shifting my posture. I'm going to be the posture that hoping they like me posture to knowing what I bring to the table. Okay, so that's pretty much the Venus and Chiron square. On the 13th, actually, Moon started out of bound journey in Gemini. Moon goes out of bound once a month. It's going to finish its out of bound journey on 19 degree of Cancer on the 16th. So I know we are overstretching it, but it starts on the 13th. So I wanted to kind of like speak a little bit about that. When a planet goes out of bound, its declination escapes the extreme northern or southern boundaries established by the sun, which is about 23.27 degree. Visually or energetically, the planet leaves the kind of corporal boardroom. It just walks out of it. So the planet leaves the solar system a little bit, and then it goes on a little bit of an independent rogue ride. So when the moon goes out of bound, our collective emotional baseline breaks free from societal norms, expectations, standard logic, especially in the sign of Gemini. It brings hyper-reactive, erratic, deeply spontaneous behavior. So people behave unpredictably, emotionally extremes, with the emotionally extreme peaks. And conventional solution just failed to calm down our collective mood. What's very interesting is that it's going to go out of bound exactly on Uranus. So that is even adding a lot more to it. It's like a launch pad. It triggers exactly that Ceres Uranus conjunction, and Ceres represents nourishment, agriculture, resources, and protective maternal instincts or matrix, while Uranus is the lightning bolt of disruption. So that emotional tone shifts into a high gear, uncovering sudden disruption in our sense of safety and forcing a radical break from traditional dependencies. So I'm guessing we're going to see a bit of a demonstrations happening due to certain type of news around those days. Maybe, on a personal level, I just abandon my scheduled plans. I don't care about the checklists. Maybe you find yourself driving to an unfamiliar location. Maybe I'm going to start a wild conversation with someone. Trying something completely outside your normal routine. As the moon moves into Cancer, that wave of intense protective energy is going to be about your homeland, your kitchen, your home, your diet. So maybe you just change how you store food or switching to a completely alternative eating protocol or rearrange your private space just to feel a little bit more self-reliant and safe. And in the sign of Cancer, that's about erratic emotional waves as well, unexplainable mood shifts. One minute you're highly verbal, hyper focused, and then the next morning you feel deeply sensitive or hyper protective of your own energy. You know, give yourself permission to pivot, accept that your focus and emotional needs will be all over the place, a bit unconventional for these few days. So if a system or routine feels too restricted, tweak it to give yourself a bit of a breathing room. Don't beat yourself down because, for example, your diet is not going too well. Observe rather than react. because people can act erratically. They can be throwing emotional tantrums. Remember, the moon is out of bound. Give them space and don't try to force them back into something logical, the conventional boxes. Attempting to force something strict, a micromanage schedule on yourself or even on your team during those 3, 4 day period can really bring frustration. Or your computers are going to be acting out, tech meltdowns, emotional friction. So remain as adaptable as possible. Don't make any permanent family or domestic decisions just based on a temporary mood. So drastic alterations to living situations, stuff like that, might be something that we regret later on. So that's the weekly energy pattern, guys. There is a lot to think about. I hope this video helps, and I hope that if it does so, then you're gonna hit that like and subscribe button. You make a comment underneath the video. Why not? I've noticed that about 50% of my viewers do watch my videos, but they haven't pushed that like or subscribe button. So why not? It just takes one click. So do that for me, please. And I will see you now in the 12 sign breakdown. All of them are going to be in a separate video, so it's easier for you to find. Good luck and take care. Bye for now.